Oh my goodness. I'm really excited for this one. I always like to do a bit of a check-in as to like where we're at. What's the energy like for the person on the other end before we jump into
Mm,
conversation? So I just kind of want to honor that and inquire, and feel free to share as much or as little as you desire.
thank you. Yeah, I've just come out of a 2 hour call, like
Mhm.
2 minutes ago. But I feel good. Like I feel activated by that call. It was a creative jam. It's with a project called Civil X that I'm working on, which is a video game that plugs into real world sustainable activity and connecting people up. So it was, yeah, it was about the lore, the folklore of that world. And so I feel activated. I feel raw and heartbroken in some kind of capacity of failings in general, in life, but also in the last little time. Like I feel the way that I've got shackles on. Like and particularly from that inspiring jam, I was like, oh, I know how open world can be. Like I know what I'm here to do, and I feel there's this continual polarity between the total trust and the excitement, and I know that the world wants what I've got, and I've got the capacity to deliver it, and just like, yeah, it's time to flourish. And then there's this, oh, I should have done this before. I'm already too late. How am I going to get all the pieces to fit together? Like all of that. So there's a little bit of that raw, something wrong kind of feeling, not in full integrity of my embodiment practice and diet. And I'm in addictions of like too much technology, but the technology is a tool through which I'm delivering my gift. The juxtaposition. So I'm feeling a bit of that. And I'm also excited to have this conversation with you. You as a particular person, not just podcasts just make me feel good, but yeah, you as a person, I feel it's like you're a friend that I don't know yet. I really feel, and it's interesting now that talking about there's some kind of overlap map of our gene keys, which you also referenced. Yeah, I know you in the way that you show up in the world, and I feel like yeah, it's gonna something good's gonna happen. So I'm here for it.
Mm. Ah, yeah, everything you said, we could just like juxtaposition that like to my experience as well. Like I resonate with a lot of what you spoke to. With the technology piece especially, it's like, it's a beautiful tool, and it's like, oh my god, like it has me in a way, right? There's a bit of a talony like to that, a little bit of an avoidance, a little bit of like a dopamine fix thing going on with it currently. So yeah, yeah. Thank you for.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
yeah, pleasure to name it, and just it's so weird. Like I can't think my way out of it because I'm like, obviously, I should just be out in the world on the street, just trusting in the flow, get up, go into a waterfall every day, wrestle with people, blah, blah, walk around. Like, that's the way to do it. That makes sense. But I want to be able to connect with people like you anywhere around the world. And I know that I can only serve the person I'm in front of unless I use technology. And then I can speak to thousands of people. And there's so many important things, not just about my project, it's about understanding and leveraging all of the game design and all the other things that people are doing collectively. Like there's really good arguments for both sides. And it's like, I can see how they're both an avoidance or a shrinking. Like to go off grid is like a negligence of communal responsibility, but to go online is a completely defies the natural flow-based loving community localized world we're trying to build. It's like it's the paradox. I can't think my way out of this one. So I'm just gonna, yeah, just forgive, trust, keep doing the addictions. Like I love technology. I'm fascinated by coding, by artificial intelligence, by gaming, and I totally cannot wear shoes. Like I'm barefoot all the time. I like rolling around. I do breath work like several times a day with clients. I slap my face a lot. I eat cereal out of the bath. Like yeah, that's always going to happen. And maybe in that addiction there is balance because I'm addicted in two opposite directions. So yeah.
There's a thing about, and it's hard for me to like put words around it and name, because I also value that, like, following your spontaneity, following your whims, following sensation and your excitement. And then there's this other piece of like, I desire to engage with people in a certain way, with certain types of people who are really ready to dance with me in the way I want to dance with. And when it comes to drawing those people in, I have to like put myself in a different timeline, like put myself in a different character.
Mm.
And for me, that takes me out of like my like organic natural flow of like how I like to be. And there's a bit of like a rebellious like, I don't want to do that. Like I don't want to have to put myself out of the moment and into this person's shoes now. And that's what's being asked of me right now in terms of calling in the people that I really desire to work with, right? And I desire to play with. So it is a paradox. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally know. I'm also completely in that space and have been for a while, whereby I trust theoretically, philosophically, that when we honor our genius, when we stick to our natural channel, it feeds into the holistic mandala that we're all a part of. Like it is going to be exactly what's needed by someone else. I can't foretell how my surplus meets their deficit, how my yin meets the yang, how I balance them out. And I've got to trust in the architecture of the overall thing, not trying to curate other people's experiences and make sure I make sense to them. But I completely do that all the time. Like, and I find that really difficult to even though the irony is open world is all about authenticity. So many times I feel like I round out the edges so I can speak to everyone. When I'm on like a Facebook Live or something like that, I'm just like, the world is watching now. All 7 billion people are tuned into my personal. So I'm going to use language and be soft and benevolent and welcoming. But yeah, I wish I was more of a punk, like I have punk heart philosophy, but yeah, basically paradox. Like, yeah, I try to be liked by everyone. I really don't like it when someone doesn't like me. I'm here, the rebel that must be liked by everyone. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Ah, yeah. Maybe we will just use this podcast to dive into the psychology, like the paradox of being natural and appealing to other people at the same.
Yeah, at the same time. Yeah.
But okay, so that actually brings up a curiosity for me around art and artistry and like what makes something universally compelling, even if people are looking at it and interpreting it through different lenses. Like there's something about like classical music, right, or certain forms of dance that are universally compelling. Like a lot of people pull from it, and it feels archetypal for me when I think it, when I kind of feel into like the essence of why that is. And there's a curiosity for me around like the marriage of like my quirky moments with like the archetypal essence of what's actually going on behind the scenes for me. And maybe I kind of feel like I'm speaking in these really ambiguous terms, but I'm curious.
No, I'm tracking. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say, I feel like there was kind of a question inferred there, which I can answer, which is like what makes art universal but idiosyncratic to our specific experience. And I think that, as with everything in life, it's all relative. I don't know if there is a universality in all aspects. I think that everything we do, even if it's like glitch ridden, techno hip hop talking about the transgender movement in the 1980s, like even if it's very specific, there will be flavors which are inherent, which come and speak of the universal human experience, or whatever we are, a conglomerate of spiritual, physical, animal, when viewed in history. Like we look at classical being different to jazz, being different to hip hop, but I don't know, if you zoom out, they're probably the same thing. If in a universal context, it's probably just like human beings recording themselves on instruments, and they reverberate and it goes into their ears and they feel good, like it's like they are universal. But when we're too close to something, like we can't see the full map. So I think when we have distance from things, we start to see the pattern and the chaos. Often you'll hear that in people, oh, I can't, the modern, whatever it is, the minimalist art movement or the glitch hop thing. It's not music, or it sounds all the same. It looks all the same. Like I can't see, there's nothing here. This is not art. But that's only because we're too close to it, and yet we're not in it. It's still got this othering. So I like the idea, as Andy Warhol says, something along the lines of create art, and then while others are deciding if it's good or bad or not, make more art. It's like unhanding our curation of trying to make sense and be relevant, and trusting that when we are in our process, we're going to be infusing our DNA into it in some way. It's like DeMartini says to do with purpose, John DeMartini, that you can't neglect your purpose. You look at what you fill your space with, what you spend your money on, what you do with your spare time, and somehow you are adhering to that calling. So similarly with art, I do believe we can't actually always control what's in there. Like you might think, I'm doing the jazz hands. Look, I'm actually a finger artist, and we're watching your feet. Or it's just like so many comedians. It's not the jokes. It's like the steez. It's the shtick. It's like the essence that's coming through. And you can't help that. It's like the quality of the sound of your voice, regardless of the joke you're telling. So that's my kind of answer to that is it's all universal when viewed from a particular perspective. And we don't know when we're adding to the record, the artistic record or the cultural record of our time, we don't know what player is going to spin that disc. I really like the idea of these time capsules. We have actually, as human beings, sent these archives of our culture and our art and our religion and the lexicon of our language into outer space, just like aliens, like, will you work this out? And so like at some point, I believe there will be a universality. But if we did want to try and task ourselves with being universal while being specific, I think it's, once again, a paradox. I would want to see a very unburdened, raw, authentic experience happening, say, on the camera. But at the same time, I believe that we as human beings are inextricable from our story-weaving, narrative-obsessed minds. So we impose things over nature. That's why sometimes when you add a soundtrack to like a pan of the camera, it feels like more real, because that's kind of in the illusion of this identity. When we take in the raw wilderness, we're adding real-time nostalgia to things. So sometimes when we move away from realism, it almost comes back to being more authentic to the human experience. It's like, yeah, like you could take a photo, but then if you put the photo with a bit of animation or you tell me the background story to that person, I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now I feel the human in there. So that's kind of how it can be universal. I think if you just depict life as it is, that is obviously the common reference point. Mm-hmm. Like I smell grass, you smell grass, I know grass. You just show me grass without like turning it purple. I know it's grass. Yeah. But maybe if you put a bit of a hue, I will know what it was like for you to walk barefoot on that grass, or, this is the kind of interesting relation point. And maybe the truth is always found in the alchemy of the polar opposites. If you look at dimensionality, and I think we as artists are all about dimensions because we are exuding out from ourselves to another point, the witness, the artist, even back to self, if it's cathartic art process. But it needs to go from one point to the other to exist. Otherwise, it's just a dream. It's just an idea. Same with the actual physical dimensions of the universe. If we all collapse down, and maybe it's going to happen at one day, the whole universe compresses down to one little pea size, whatever thing. That's no life. But when it expands out, we have another point, and it is in the conveyance of, in quantum physics, I talk about the observer creates the actuality. So by having distance, by me communicating to you, and maybe through the juxtaposition of realism and my idiosyncratic, personal, warped version of it, maybe it's in the talking of the two of those that we come to some kind of understanding of reality and art that is truthful.
So something that I find incredibly compelling about you is your, like, the depth of embodiment that I witness in you, like your willingness to just like be in the physicality and the sensationalism of your existence. But then you can just like take a conversation and go like where you took it now, like just like take it to like the 11th dimension of esotericism. And it's like, oh, I'm looking at all these now that I wasn't aware of. What's that like for you? Like to like be able to
delicious.
to touch on all of that, the sensationalism and like
Mm.
the mental puzzle piecing together of our existence.
It's yeah, it's delicious, like I said, but kind of how and why that came to be. And I often use the analogy of when I learned to rollerblade. And for all the skaters out there, don't hate, you know, skateboards are cool too. But when you rollerblade or ice skate or ski, you have to lean into it. Otherwise, it's actually more dangerous. Even if you want to be safe about it, you've got to fully just get into there, and you can feel the fibers of the wheel grinding on the asphalt. And that's actually the safest way. You've got to lean in. And so I learned a long time ago, the only way was to be all out and embodied. Like I was very awkward and cerebral and internal as a teenager. And I have quite masculine features. I've got a big nose, and as a teenager that didn't fit my face very well. I was lanky and I had really bad pimples on my face in my teenage years. And I grew up in South Africa, going to a Montessori school, running around barefoot. Everyone was in one classroom, like the whole school. We called our teacher by the first name. And I remember coming over to Australia, and I had to wear my hair back tied up because I had long hair then as well, even longer than now. I had to wear a uniform for the first time. I had a tie. It was like strangling me. I had to wear these leather shoes. Never done exams before. Had to go into the school and do exams. Like I arrived halfway through the year and had to sit the half yearly exams with like a month to go. It was like crazy discomfort. And I remember the moment I broke through for me in that school was when I had an opportunity to do a drama piece in the school hall in front of everyone. I put on a unitard, like skin tight, probably could like see my balls up there in a cardboard box on stage. And I remember doing this absurdist piece, and I jumped out of the box in my onesie and was just like foaming at the mouth about like strawberry milkshake or something like that. And I had to just lean into it. It's like, this is my new school. I'm just going in balls to the wall. I just like, and it was the safest way to be embodied, to feel, because my nervous system, it fires quickly, and I just need to let it go so that I can come to the stillness within that. And it worked. Like the quote unquote jocks thought it was great. The artistic people thought it was awesome. The really sensitive, emotive people thought I was really vulnerable and blah, blah, blah. And so I kind of bought myself an all access pass by just going in embodied and cerebral and being weird. And I really think this is true in life. Life is so generous. You can be whoever you want to be. And when we talk about that, be whoever you want to be. No, but really, there is so little, unless you're in a refugee camp or locked in a basement, and these things do happen, there is, for the majority of us, so much freedom that we don't allow ourselves. And so I've found how by being embodied and letting myself go, I actually create space for myself to think. And it's like the embodiment is a continuation of the mental process. So often we try to come to the conclusion before we say anything. But if we look at ourselves as an interconnected being, we literally are breathing in and out of the oxygen and carbon dioxide from the people around us. And who knows, like akashically, hologenetically, what output is being exchanged. I can't come to a well-rounded conclusion in my head. I need it to come through my body. I need to show you. I need to feel the echo, the sonar ping back, to then understand what my idea really meant in its seed form.
Mm.
So yeah, that's just how I've learned to be. And I've done it enough times that I know it works. So it's kind of like the safest option to be embodied. And just like right now, like you've invited me into a really core question, because that is like what I want to be, the clown on the stage covered in the pie grease, who's like whimpering and like holding a flower. And like I feel it in my whole nervous system, like it's why I'm here, with everything, just to be on the stage. And I don't mean in front of the lights, I mean just like in life, having it just up against my skin, because people feel so alienated in their own bodies. Mm-hmm. And like everything that I'm called to do is to go onto the edge of the cliff. Like as a kid, when I'd be at the seaside and I saw that false fence, I'll be like, no, but I want to feel my feet dangle over the edge. Like I know that, not from an educated program socially should do, but I just feel that. I, I don't breathe fully until my feet are dangling. I don't breathe fully until all of the social expectations of what we should say now are gone. I feel so restricted and uncomfortable. And so that's why I'll let myself cry, because it's what leads to that softness when I can actually feel connected to you, and I can feel like we're doing something worthwhile, not just another podcast, not just another chat, not just another social dance, a bee's mating call, like, yeah, I'm safe, you're safe, we know what we're doing. It's like, oh, please, like I want to fail so hard at that. But that's the only way that we can actually come home to the actuality, the conglomerate that we are. And there's lots of academic terms for these things. And I know we're both connected to Spiral, which is, talks about the 5-body system, but however you like to conceive of ourselves, surely we understand that we are primal, but we are like esoteric as fuck. We are emotional, but we're also can be objective and complete service. We are mystical and superstitious and symbology and nightmares and subconscious, but we can be factual and calculating and understand the statistical analysis of the probability of. So it's the only way to be real, like to be embodied, but also to be academic, and to give ourselves the artistic license. That's a nice phrase, artistic license. Because art is yours. We are born into a society where there are pre-established ladders of success. If you are a good enough actor, you'll get this Oscar nomination, or you can get this Grammy, or whatever the art form is. And that's really claimed something which is so innate. So I think most people are as embodied as me and as cerebral and esoteric as me. But I think it's like, oh no, you need to be one of those people in the movement culture with like 6-pack abs to be embodied, or these yogis who can fold their legs around their head, or you need to have a vocabulary and articulate eloquence to really convey your ideas and make sure and speak in a certain way, not like if I talk like this, you know what I mean? Like I can't actually sit at the table with you and tell you how I think. Like these are all just the restrictions. You are freaking genius. You do have access to the Godhead. You understand also on an intuitive level what's going on with our collective. And you will fight. Mothers will lift cars off babies. Like we are primal. We are plugged into our instinct. It's all of us. But I guess, I learned really early on how to lean into the wheels and let the rubber burn, because it was the safest way to land and feel at home. And then the lineage of the sacred clown helped. I really aspired to and look up to people like Dario Fo with Commedia dell'arte, and some really great drama teachers early on. Thank you to Miss Marbita, my high school drama teacher, and Brett Heath and Anthony Skuse, and some people who just like showed up in pretty ugly forms and spitty and let me sweat and was like, yeah, cool, bring it, kid. So they let me know that there was a place for it, because I think art is this really, it's amazing we managed to keep it. It's this really beautiful realm or arena where insanity can be given a different name, and we can learn from our instincts, and beauty can be captured without needing to sell something other than itself as entertainment. Like it's a magical and mystical space. And I'm so glad, otherwise in previous times you can be burned at the stake. And even in some religious spaces, music and art and beauty is kind of outlawed as well. But for the most part, it's this little secret pocket of human convulsion and ecstasy and depravity that we call art. So yeah, I guess that was my clause, my escape clause, to be able to explore the stuff, as I considered myself to be a clown. And I felt what it was like to be a jongleur, like this idea of the wandering minstrel who had access to the king's quarters and chambers. He could like ridicule the king. Everyone else would have their heads chopped off, but he was like, somehow, yeah, I can call you a big fat old dude, It's like, whoa, all access pass. So this idea of openness which is pivotal to open world, was early on. I think I'm a trickster more than a martyr. I will bend, I will flow, because I just want to play. And I have maybe a laziness. I don't want to play my role in society. If it's something mechanical, I'm a really bad employee. I just like tune out really quickly. So I've worked out a bunch of tricks to communication mainly, that I can weave stories with people, and I can make myself important to them, or I can make myself completely irrelevant so I don't get sucked into something. So that's why. That's why, Chrissy, that's why.
As you were speaking, I noticed I had like a bunch of little like thought forms popping up and like little like tangents that I wanted to follow, and then it just like
Cool.
evaporated as I was listening. I was like, oh, we're just gonna follow.
Just hold on to the radio. Yeah.
But there was one that really stuck, because it's an embodied, like it's a visceral thing for me, and I still do it all the time, where I will play a character. Like I will just like put myself in a different timeline, in a different scenario. Like I'll take a scenario that's either played out in my life, and I'll position myself as like the narrator, or like the person that's like writing the story, or I will project into the future a scenario that feels really delicious to me. And I will just play out a character and play out a role. And sometimes it's me being more honest than I was in the past. And it's like fully like finishing and saying all the things I really wanted to say. And sometimes it's like creating this scenario that I desire to happen. But I'm jumping into these characters, and it feels like, for me, I feel really alive when I do it. I feel really like honest and engaged in my life when I do it. And there's a catharsis to it as well, because sometimes I'll never play that character other than in like the hypothetical container I'm creating for myself. And it's like, well, right now, this is what I want to do. And it made me curious about if I was to lean even deeper into that honesty. Because when I said embodiment before, like I see you as embodied, like what I really meant was like transparent and like honestly, like just conveying your experience in the moment, which I see a ton of, like in the way that you do it, like in the way that you emote and characterize and like move through whatever it is you're experiencing. And my curiosity was like, is what I do a symptom or just like an outlet for me that maybe wouldn't even be necessary if I was fully engaging? Or is it just very much a natural, beautiful, like exciting thing that I get to do because like there's 1,000 different timelines I could live, and I am just choosing a fraction of who I am to express most of the time, you know? It's like there's all these things that I desire to do. And if I followed every single one of them, like I would be entirely fragmented, you know, just kind of wandering around doing the whole living off the grid thing, right? And so in deciding, all right, this is the timeline I'm going to live in, there are certain constraints I'm going to obey. There are parts of me that like desire to express, and I create containers for that. And I feel like that's a lot of what you do in open world, is like you give people permission to create containers, to allow these other layers of themselves to be honored and like played out to a degree. Would you agree? And if you don't, please elaborate. And I would also love for you to share what open world is, because I was a participant for one of your rounds. And I'll share my experience after you share. But I adored it. So.
Thank you. Yay. Yes. So I feel this conversation is really about yes and both. It's a paradox. Yeah. So in answering, I say yes to both. I think that the juxtaposition of like, you're talking about a story, you know, you're creating a different story to your current reality. You're looking at it from the outside, you're projecting the future. You know, the question could be, am I avoiding something? Am I being caught up in a fantasy? Is this necessary if I just be in my embodied truth? Is that, you know, I think it's very true, even if and that's why I love theater and the fiction of being an author, Because on a spiritual level, hold my Bible for a second. I'm about to get to very, very channeling the divine. I do believe that we are doing that exact thing all the time in life. And when we get to role play our role playingness, we hear an echo of God. We go, oh shit, wait a minute. It's like a hologram that comes over reality. You go, there's something about this thing where I pretend to be a character and I'm over here witnessing myself playing that. But when I'm in the character, I really believe what I'm saying. But at the same time, I know I'm on stage. So, and I know that's not me. There's something very deeply true, I believe, about that. And when you go into the simulation hypothesis, which is saying that maybe we are in a simulation, I think that exists on multiple realms. And we don't even have to go into the physical actuality of, are we in a video game? Even on a religious and spiritual sense, the Maya, the illusion, I believe, is that everything that we are invested in, attached to in the identity of me, is a character. And when we come into that euphoric transcendental space, which can be achieved in moments of near-death experiences or through plant medicine or through, childbirth or emergencies or whatever busts us out of our attachment from the I, we come into the stillness of the unmoving presence, which is, I guess, similar to the objective point that you will play from. In this little doll within a doll within a doll, macro to micro analogy, you are playing the God of the human who is your character. So I don't think it's avoidant. I think it's very true to play characters, even if they're made up and they're fictional, because it's an echo reminder of this macro game we're playing as godlike entities puppeting this little thing which we really love and we think is self. So yeah, I don't think it's avoidant. I think it's very, maybe it's not necessary, but I think it's beautiful to do that. And in doing so, we actually liberate the attachment of that identity from the instrument of our body. If you're talking about if you were just embodied and more expressive, would that be necessary? I think that's kind of connected, because when you do that play, when you allow yourself to feel the absolute violent aspect, and then you just allow yourself to just like drop your intelligence down a few notches and just like wonder about ceiling. Like really like wonder about that, and you get to allow these energies, even though they're not you, they do kind of like, it's like flushing out the system or that channel where that part of your body or the direct animal instrument gets to be attuned. And then the result is someone who can be anyone and be willing to experience anything. Be willing to, maybe not able to, like, if a truck hits you, like you're probably not able to experience that without dying. So there are some physical limitations, but at least just the willingness, because there's this apprehension and this anxiety and this restraint from things that haven't even happened. And that is worry, like that. What's that quote about, worrying is like meditating on what you don't want. And so when we can release through these play sessions, we can release the restraint or our repelling from, a phobia of things. We can then actually just chill out and allow the instrument to ring true. It's like a physical attunement. You just flush out the channels, you do your play, you realize that you're actually an unmoving eternal consciousness and everything else is just a role. And it's like, all right, cool, so it's all a role. So now in my daily life, if you come up and ask me to dance, I don't think, I'm not the kind of person that doesn't dance. In the moment, if I feel like a dancer, then I'll respond. Or if there's some moment you're a pacifist, but you're in a situation and some woman's being hit by her partner and you go, fuck this, and you become the warrior and you go, bang, you smack them in the nose and break it. And it's like, not very nice. There could have been other ways to do it. But in that moment, you know what? I was savage. It's not me, but that was, where was the collective? I don't know. Maybe I channeled her anger back at you. I don't know. I'm the fool. I'm the clown. And that's the interesting thing about the fool, right? They're the zero in the tarot deck. And I like this little word, I play on words. It's like, nothing's above God. Nothing's greater than God. Or nothing is above God. Nothing is greater than God. And the nothingness, the nothing point is the fool. That's the 0 point. Being willing to be anyone. That's the sacred clown. And that is the open, that's the void. That's the instrument which can play any role. And to come into what you were asking about open worlds, well, that answers that too. What I'm doing with open world, is releasing story, coming into state, releasing performance, coming into experience, honoring your subjective values, but acknowledging that we live in the jungle. Law of the jungle applies. The truth is that at any moment there can be a personal apocalypse, not the general universal collapse of society, but all the social hologram walls can collapse when you walk down an alleyway and someone comes up with a knife. Where's the niceties? Where's the you can't do that? Law of the jungle. This is happening right now. Catch up to the moment. And that's where improvisation really relates to life. It's a contact dance with life. It's being willing to respond. It's being fluid enough. It'd be like water, my friends. Bruce Lee, put it into a cup, it becomes the cup, etc. So that's what open world is doing. It's training people to feel into the state, and artistry as well. This is really important. So I've got this little, I'll show you this little chart here for those playing on the visual scape. So I've got this orbit here. So the open world system has what's called orbits, which is like a martial arts belt system, but I call it art martials as opposed to martial arts. And these orbits are phases or focuses of opening your communication channels through your senses. So it starts off with the orbit of becoming, which is more meditative, that kind of 0 point. Then you come into the orbit of beholding, which is more that physical kind of stuff, primal, touching your poo. Poo Wizard came out of that. That's kind of, which you can talk about in a second too. But then coming down into the orbit of bemusing. What is to bemuse or be amused? Bemusing can be like, it's an illusion. I'm bemusing you, I'm fooling you. But also can be to inspire creation. And as an artist, if you look at art from a state, not story perspective, I think that's a really important distinction. This is what we do in open world. What's the state of color? Not the story of like pink is gold color, or black means this, white means this. That's an artificial imposition, arbitrary human assignment. What's the state of color? Can you feel it? Then we get into the supernatural. Can I feel color? What does it feel like? And I worked with a guy called Neil Harbison and Moon Ribas in New York, and he was born colorblind. And he started the Cyborg Foundation. Oh, I can hear myself now for some reason. He started a thing called the Cyborg Foundation, I think. And he implanted an antenna into his brain so that he can hear color now because he can't see it. And so this antenna goes and lands on different colors, and then they will bring a different note to his ears. And this is recalibrating the sense of color and the state. What is an emotion like if you just feel it reverberating through your body and not attribute to a success or a loss? So that's the first part of the orbit of bemusing. And then the second part is that of the mythologist. So I break it between the artist and the mythologist. The mythologist is talking about the illusion. It's about the meaning that you weave. It's about the role. You're the interviewer, I'm the person on the podcast, all these kind of artificial impositions. Really, we're just 2 points, and we're just firing wavelengths at us and creating these analogies in our own internal mindscape and then firing it back. And we're just having a bit of a play, but we can assign these roles. That's the role of a mythologist. And as artists, it's important because that weaves a culture. Because I think we're actually alone in this world with the illusion of belonging. On a physical level, we get that through sex, through touch, through food, through hugs, through even just energetically being in the same space as someone. That's a fact, like we are together in that physical sense. But a lot of it is cerebral. I think I'm a part of a species, or I think I'm a part of a political movement, or this or that. Not really. It just, through that illusion, we actually do physical world action, which then has some kind of result. But also, even that result is often just mental. Like the whole political system of voting. Sometimes it lands in your backyard. Sometimes, I don't want to be ignorant, 100% people get imposed on in very real ways by people with guns. Coming back to the jungle law, all that happened on this planet is the best criminal won. The person with the most brute force is now at the top of the thing. And then that's just the law of the jungle. It's still in play, even within the constraints of society. But within open world, what I want to do is, in a jester, joker, oops, can't do that kind of way, say like society is a cult. And just understand that we are at the foothill of the great monolith of whatever we have constructed artificially over nature through our through our story, and be responsible as artists. You're doing that. Even if you think that just putting a Facebook status update is not art, you are contributing to the mimetic culture, the meme of sharing. And that is influencing what I really think is happening in the world. I mean, as an example with COVID, like I wouldn't know that it existed at all unless I turned on a screen currently. And some people now have masks, but like, I don't know that that's happening. I don't think it's not happening, but I also want to still myself and just go to mistrust my own mind. And this is something, talking about duality, I'm really learning in my own relationship as well, is, you know, with Naila, and she's doing so much work around the integration of masculine and feminine. What does that really mean? How do we get out of the patriarchal obsession with the mind, the dictation from our own inner self, which is really not self? Don't trust your own mind. What happens if that, you know, what happens if that? So I have my opinions, but I also understand we are weaving the story. We are indoctrinating each other constantly. And so with Open World, what I hope to do is that whenever you come to a performance, you know that real experiences are being held and that anything is possible. You think you're coming into the story of like a theater show. I'm going to sit here, the light goes over there, you guys play out on stage. Like, I don't know that necessarily. And to honor what comes up in the moment, because genius and truth and breakthrough moments are fleeting blips on the heart monitor of life. You might have a little niece or nephew come to you at a family party and look at you in the eyes and for a second try and tell you that they're being abused at home, and it's gone. Or you might have the next great composer about to like get up and freestyle at a party, and someone says something or looks at them and then they sit down. It's like almost happened. It was almost a breakthrough, almost world changing. And so with Open World Theatre, if a phone rings or a dog barks or a door goes open, honor it. Don't allow our art to smother the moment. Even if you have to put all your great plans, your great script, all this preparation rehearsal out the window, honor the moment, because it is the pulse of life. And I believe that is the only sickness, the only pathology, is to go against the flow of the moment, which is it has many constituent parts. It's got our own intuition. It's got the general group vibe. It's got the physical actuality of the constellation of, you know, your physical space. Like, yeah, Open World calls you out to honor the moment and be brave enough to completely fail so you can break open forward and humanity can witness itself in you. And that is also the great privilege of being a clown, is you can be stupid and dumb and make it, you know, you can be the first one to make the mistake, be the crash test dummy of life. So that's that answer.
Yeah, there's a like a part of me that wants to like toggle with what you just said about like being with like addressing the moment, right? So not letting, I think that was important, not letting art suffocate what's emerging, or like whatever else is showing up in the moment. It's like playing with it, not against it. There were a couple things that I wanted to note. One was like when I did Open World with you, the thing that still sits with me now is the invitation to be moved by something outside of my like I self, my ego self. It's like opening to spontaneous impulse and like, you know, letting my body just kind of do whatever it wants to do, and like kind of following like the sensation, you know, like riding it out and seeing what's on the other side, but not even just to see what's on the other side, but to like feel the experience of allowing that, you know, fully allowing that deep curiosity and that like sense of, oh my God, this is bigger than me. And then there's this other piece where I'm like, oh my God, and we live with ego, and we live with like, we are humans, so we have the animal brain, and it's beautiful, and it's also constantly trying to put us in a box and make things predictable and have us respond in socially acceptable ways. And one of the things that I loved about open world was the mantra of I don't have to be entertaining, you know, like I don't
Hmm.
have to adhere to the expected response. And yet if the doorbell rings, for me, it would feel like the expected response is to answer it. And then like there's also this part of me that's like, no, like I don't want it right now. I'm in the middle of
Mm,
something, you know?
mm. Cool.
So this, yeah, that's what came up when you said like if the doorbell rings, I'm like, I wouldn't answer it.
Well, but that's a perfect example because, and that's the thing. Open, and I love it. It's like this real open palmed methodology because it can't ever be wrong, or it's not didactic and stringent. You don't have to answer the door,
Mhm.
but use the fact that you don't want to answer the door because that's here.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So the
Amen.
doorbell is present, but your resistance to it, and so you could do that by saying, I'm not going to fucking answer that. I'm in the middle of art. And everyone would probably, if you're on stage, they would like laugh, like, oh my God, like we were thinking of that, and like don't interrupt, blah, 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 because it's in the room.
Yeah.
It's the zeitgeist, it's the ghost of the time, it's here. So by tapping into it, you're leveraged like a surfer on a wave. The wave of everyone's, oh my God, what's going to happen with the doorbell is there, and then you just jump onto the surfer and you just name it. You carve through all of the built up charge around that. That's one way you could play with it in an open world methodology. The other way would be just to feel it, because I often say there's two workshops or two processes happening. One is the activity I'm inviting you into, and one is your internal response to that. So in this case, if you're doing an open world performance, you'd know, oh, I'm meant to acknowledge all the things that happened. Doorbell rang. I'm meant to go and answer now because it's really happening. Oh, I don't want to do that. But that is just as important as the task of answering the door, is your own internal resistance to that. So then you could not even name it, but you just go, I'm going to be hurt, or, bring it into what you are then performing because it's there.
Mm.
And that is when, you asked earlier, like, how do I be so embodied or etc. That's how, is to honor what's there and utilize it, knowing that I can either bend it towards the Brechtian, tear it down, let you see behind the stage. I'm not going to answer that because I'm in the middle of art. We're doing a performance here. Or I stay true to my script, but I don't deny my body.
Yeah.
And notice that I've got charge around that. And that is going to be the electric click that the audience goes, whoa, she's like really meaning that for some reason now.
Yeah. Yeah, and what that just brought down for me is that anytime we're living, like whenever we're consciously living, we're consciously making choices. Anytime we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else. And for me at least, there's always a part of me that like wants to have the option, like is a little resistant to the no over here, even though the yes feels really good. And so I feel like what you're expressing and conveying is like somehow weaving that like other part of you, like instead of just fully choosing the timeline, acknowledging that there are other versions of you that are like want to be over there, like want to be doing this, or feel like they should be doing and like bringing them all, welcoming them all into the moment, whether you're naming it or you're just like conveying it as an energy, or just honoring all the layers. It really feels like a deep honoring and awareness of like all the ways in which we wrestle with paradox in our humanity.
Yeah, surfing that chaos and understanding that what seems like a juxtaposition or an opposite or a choice might, if you can imagine, we're looking at the universe through a peephole and we're like, oh, there's this line over here and this line over here that don't connect. But if we could go through further enough and put our head through the peephole, or if we pan back farther enough and get the bigger picture, oh, that line actually connected up to there outside of my window of perception. And so you could liken it to, say, if you're this finger on this hand, you're like, oh, but like, I don't want to be this finger. Or maybe I do want to be this finger. No, I want to be this finger. Like, answer or not. Or blah, blah. And then you're like, actually, what about this hand? Like you think you're making a decision here, but you're on the same hand. But you answer the door or not, you're still doing a blah. There might be, when we release our control, we start to feel, well, what about my head? What about my toes? What about your hand? So we think we're making this big decision, but really maybe it leads to the same palm. And that's the chaos. I just really like that space of silence after all my talking. It just felt really good to stop listening to it for a second. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, so to honor like what's moving through me, like anytime there's that space, there's that like, oh my God, you gotta feel it. You gotta feel the space, you know? You gotta say something else, you know, it's a follow-up question. It's like, I don't want to. I just want to sit here and breathe.
Yeah. Ah,
Do I edit
amazing.
that out of the podcast? Do I leave 10 minutes of space? Because that's maybe how long I need. I don't know.
I feel to just speak directly to the listener, because I've definitely been talking to you and absolutely loving that. But this person, I'm in your ear right now, or in your face if you're watching this. You, I want to be your friend in the supernatural aid concept in Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. That little freaky creature at the edge of the forest who's summoning you into the dark woods. And I want you to feel the cynicism, the denial of magic, but I also want you to feel that whimpering inner child that just wants to stop them cutting down the Amazon rainforest, or just wants to stop your dad shouting at your mum. As impossible as it seems, there is beauty in us, in our innocence. And I'm welcoming you into that deep forest of your body. And I want to be your friend, laughing at all your jokes and jumping with you in the cold stream and having that argument if there's a point you really want to make. I'll play the devil's advocate. But I really want you to make this podcast and this moment of you listening to my voice tap into your inner network of something that is actually true. Even if I'm completely wrong on everything, what's your integrity? What do you know? And feeling it, allowing your body to be a compass, a measuring stick of what is in alignment, and pull out even these earbuds. If my voice is the imposition, pull me the hell out of your head, or see if there's any other impositions, mentally, emotionally, energetically, right in this moment, of a person that keeps coming up in your mind, of a situation that you continually contort yourself to fit into the costume of some unresolved promise, something that you broke that you really want to fix. Don't ignore it, because after this podcast ends, that inner dialogue is still going to be going. And so take this little moment, this little meditation, as a chance to make this podcast mean something, because it is a Herculean task to try and make a change in this world. And Chrissy's doing this podcast to try and spread ideas. And I'm doing open world because I freaking want to turn life into a game. But we do it in these little pits at a time. Like all of my whole career, all of my legacy as a person might just come down to this podcast, because it might be the only time that I ever come into contact with you. So please take it into you. Please make it matter. And not in the way that I think it needs to matter, but in some way that is undeniably you. Yeah. Thank you for playing.
I was hoping you would go there. I was going to set you up for that. Like, I want you to. What really stood out for me was a live you did. Maybe I responded to it. I think I commented on it maybe, but it moved something for me. It was what I stand for, not against. And it was so visceral for me because I come from a psychological background, so I understand why we remember things that we label as like aversive or negative. And like how our life is a game and a journey to synthesize that with everything that we feel is beautiful and exciting. and to be a voice for what you are for in a world that is constantly focusing on the pathological and the problem, for me was really cathartic and therapeutic. It was validating to witness. It was like, oh yeah, that's also a dimension that we really need right now. And the way you were delivering that was just so like, I could just feel it was just really from the heart. It was just a tumbling out of what was within and like what you deeply were convicted in. Yeah, and I believe that's really important. Like I believe like even after all the marketing stuff I do and all of the trainings or coaching that I've done, there's like the most magnetic thing to me is somebody who's willing to just be really authentic in their process and just like deliver from the heart and allow, I think what you said earlier, I forget exactly word for word, but it was something about like, for me, I heard was like living out loud and allowing yourself to be in process and to, it was something about like we're attached to having the conclusion before we even say anything. And like for me, if I'm not speaking, if I'm not moving energy, like I just get gridlocked. I'm like, to do something. I have to move something in order to alchemize, in order to trust the organic. Like there's an organic, like, I don't know, rearranging of things that happens when I just allow myself to be a vessel and like channel and move energy. And then all of a sudden I'm just like, oh wow, that feels really like ancient. You know, a thought that I'm just like, yeah, I don't know where that came from. But I feel like you speak from that place very often. You're able to tap into that, and that's a lot of the magic. That's a lot of like the permission you offered people in open world theater and in the work that you do. I'm sure one-to-one and the other things that you're offering. And I deeply appreciate that. I just want to like celebrate and honor that as something I stand for. And I just see so much of like my essence in you when you speak. I'm like, yes, I get that. Wow. That deep exhale of ooh, right? There's the permission to be whole. There's the permission to be chaotic and owning all of that as part of the magic of existing, of being conscious, right? So thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, such a honor. Wow. Yes, thank you for naming that. And it's important. Like, I'm a very driven person. I'm very confident, but like you saying that is 100% gallons in the tank to fuel the rocket ship. Like it's so, yeah, it's so lovely to hear from the outside um, what's coming across. And it also felt like a very coherent answer to one of your earlier questions, talking about how can we be universal and also personal. Because I believe when we speak from that space, when we're authentic,
Mm.
my expression doesn't have to be at all what you think. It's not so much the particular dance that I'm doing. You like jazz, or you like right wing or left wing, and so I'm like evangelical about that. So you're like, yeah, it actually doesn't matter, even if I spoke a different language, because it's witnessing someone's physiology opening up to the liquid lightning of that channel space.
Mm.
That is the permission. And how it manifests in you might be different to me. So that's my personal experience that's coming through. It's just like the icing on the cake. It's just the little leaf on the river. The river is just allowing. And so I think that's how our art can be universal, even if it's relaying the minuscule molecular details of my subjective experience. If done in an open way, we are human literate. We know body language. I know the simple way that your pupils will dilate, or you'll sweat or move, or I can feel what it's like in your body and your spine, how your posture changes. You know, like we are so attendant upon these things on a subconscious level as well, that is how it becomes universal. So yeah, I'm so glad that sometimes when I'm communicating, and I can feel it as well, like that particular live you're talking about was done immediately from or off the back of doing embodiment practice. I was sitting in this room listening to this like Nordic Viking music, breathing. I suddenly felt open world. And so for me, open world is a state of being. That's actually what it is in its entirety. There are many techniques and modalities and orbits and names, but it's one thing, and that's being open and alive.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's how that came out. Was I just felt, yep, and I know the signature of it in my body enough that I'm like, cool, like I'm gonna trust this. I'm gonna go with it. So I'm so glad I did.
Mm, yeah, the word that's coming through is coexistence. And it's so ineffable, but it's like permission to like be everything that you desire to be, or everything that wants to arise from you, just to allow like the multidimensionality of who we are in our essence. And yeah, that's such a gift. It's such what you offer, what you practice, it's courageous and it's a gift. And I want to just I want everybody to witness it so that they can get activated and they can get that permission slip and do with it what they get to do, whatever that next step is for them. You know, you're just a lily pad on their journey, but a very important one, right? You know.
Absolutely. No, I'm totally happy to be a lily pad. Yeah, nothing but a lily pad. Yeah,
Right?
nothing but a lily pad, and nothing but a lily pad, and nothing but a lily pad. Yeah, and it feels like the right moment of leapfrogging even to do this podcast. Like it's serendipitous. It's perfect. Literally last night I was up to like 2 a.m, finishing my website again for like the 12th time in my life. I've built a website from scratch, trying to articulate and bring everything together to convey to the world what I'm doing. But yeah, I really love your invitation to the listener to reach out to me to get involved with Open World, because I feel actually really ready to meet that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I've got an adventure club I'm starting here. We're going to physically meet up and explore the urban wilds and so do social experiments. But there's an online space. I'm going to be play testing my game Vicarious. So you, whoever you are, witnessing this, you can play me as a human avatar in the game of life. You plug in through Zoom. You're in my ear. You tell me go walk forward, turn left, speak to that person. That's a whole other thing called Vicarious, which I'm play testing. Doing the meetup groups called Games Without Borders. I've got my orbit system. If you want to do the internal martial arts and walk your own pilgrimage, start to create your quest. So yeah, in essence, I feel that, and thank you for encouraging people to reach out. And I feel that this is the perfect crossroads for that. I'm really ready for it. And I also feel socially, the environment and the economy of ideas, not just money, but just the energies and psychologies, it needs to open to the chaos, to realize all the roles we're playing, to open up to that void space. So yeah, thank you for being also a lily pad in my path. It's like lily pads jumping on lily pads, they're mirror reflections. Then we realize it's the same lily pad, it was just the sky looking at the water. Same reflection. So yeah, thank you for being lily pad with this podcast.
You're so welcome. You'll love this. I was watching a documentary about the Sumerians, like one of the oldest civilizations, and they thought that the sky was another ocean, and that sometimes that ocean would release and rain down. And I was like, I need to go lie down until I see the sky and the ocean. Because it was one of my favorite things as a child, to lie down, and I would put my feet up and I would imagine that the sky was the earth and I was walking on the clouds and I was bouncing around.
Yes. What a disservice to ourselves mentally, but also therefore physically, to deprive ourselves of daydreaming, but deeply believing daydreams because of our cynicism and because of science. And that's why any kind of conspiracy theory or possibility, like, at least just feel it. There's a chunk of people who really believe this, whether you believe the earth is round or flat, like they're opposing kind of concepts, but like, just, and this is also open word, allowing yourself to go, maybe the sky is an ocean. Like, what if all the NASA things and stuff like that are lying to us? And really, here we are, as ignorant as we've always been. Like, oh yeah, the earth is in the middle of the solar system and you're a heretic if you say otherwise, and we'll burn you at the stake. Like, we are not in favor of different ideas, historically speaking. So there's a chance that that's in our DNA pattern. We're doing it right now. So like, yeah, let's open to the silliness, the completely ludicrous ideas, because of, if only so you can lie there running on clouds.
Yes.
That's a worthwhile thing. That's a worthwhile thing. And we lose the connection to that in our adulthood because we don't allow make-believe. And we literally can't. I cannot lie on the ground and really feel that the sky is an ocean. I actually can't. I can think it's a cute idea, but I have this insulation that prevents me from believing. And that is the self-hypnosis and self-programming. We're doing it anyway. Just do it in a really creative way. and then you get access to all timelines and all dimensions.
I want to invite anybody to who, some people, I can't believe this, have not had the experience of those, like, they look like 2D kaleidoscope pages, and then if you put your nose up to them and then you slowly back away,
Magic eye.
You see a 3D picture inside. And I feel like that is a beautiful metaphor for like what is actually possible with life in general. It's like you can change your perspective just by softening your gaze and maybe twitching an eye, maybe crossing the eyes. Things will shift. And who's to say one perspective is more valid than the other? You know, it's like the people who are standing along and around the elephant, right? Somebody's looking at the elephant's ass and they're like, that's an ass. And somebody's like, that's a trunk. And then, you know, it's like collecting,
it's an elephant. Yeah.
It's an elephant, right? Collecting all the reference points and being open to different reference points that don't initially make sense to you. That takes a lot of humility for me because, you know, there's a part of me that really wants to like present things in a pretty box and makes sense.
It totally makes sense that we want that, and that this is the polarity coming full circle to the original kind of concept of that irreconcilable paradox within us. These opposing points is that we want to protect our subjective view with our life. You say it's a trunk, it's fucking trunk. There's no way this is a leg. This is just a trunk. Actually, it's a snake. It's definitely, I feel it's a snake. You know, like there's a reason that our psyche and our ego and our id wants to protect what is real to us. Because it does make sense, because otherwise we can go insane and nothing means anything. And we go nihilistic and we think that our parents are trying to kill us and we just run in front of buses because we think that it's a marshmallow. Like, I get it. There's a reason we need some coherence to our self-ordained subjective people. But we are not just our root chakra. We're not just our primal physiological parasympathetic nervous system. We are undeniably an opinion. I think, therefore I am. What is that universal Godhead perspective? And I believe, I mean, this is also refutable, debatable, but I do believe there is that objective, detached, selfless part of us. And I know for me, I love getting that non-self space as well, in which it isn't a trunk. Or maybe I see the elephant, or maybe I just don't believe my own hands on this thing, which feels like a snake. And go like, you know what, to me it feels like a snake, but you know, it really might be a tail or an ear, like the other person said. And there is some kind of, talk about ineffable, it's this esoteric space. I can't make sense of it with my thinking, but I know there's a truth in the objective. I know there's a truth outside of the periphery of my awareness. I mean, in a very real sense, I know that there are radio waves going through this room I'm in, and Wi-Fi waves. I can't see them, but I know that scientifically they're there. It's like the movie Lucy, which I really like. She goes outside because she's had this drug which activates all of her brain. And so she can actually see the toroidal field coming out of the tree, and she can see the conversations between the mobile phones. Like, these things are happening, we just don't have access to them. So yeah, taking the little bits of things within our subjective reality that we can grip onto. Like, if you're a real science believer, well, you believe radio waves, right? Cool, okay. So with that point, I know there are things that I can't sense that are very real. And then just soften that. And if nothing else, we start to forgive the other person who's saying it's a tail or it's an ear. We go, oh, wait a minute, to you, I'm the idiot saying it's a trunk. Oh, shit. Cool, I get it. And there's some kind of universal love in that, which is very vital.
Where can people find you if they would like to reach out and learn more about your offerings?
My new website, openworldtheater.com. And it's spelt for everyone. It's spelt with the American ER at the end. And for the rest of the world, the RE at the end. So just type in, however you like, openworldtheater.com. That's a hub. And then on a few other places like Twitch and Twitter, it's at Ouch Games, OWCH, which stands for Open World Collaborative Heuristic. And then on other platforms, it's just Atlas Talisman. So Instagram and LinkedIn, Atlas Talisman. But yeah, please, I would love it if you reach out and say, oh, I heard you on Chrissy's podcast and blah, like nothing is wrong. Just send your ping out to me. I look forward to expanding my board game of life to include a player token of you.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, please reach out to Atlas if you're feeling moved in any way. Share that. And also feel free to connect too on the Art of Aliveness podcast insiders group and request if you want more of Atlas on the podcast, please let me know.
Absolutely.
Go down 1,000 rabbit holes because I'm really good at that. And I enjoy it as well. It makes me feel alive. So please, also the artofaliveness@gmail.com. You can connect with me there. Thank you so much, Atlas, for this. It's an honor and a privilege and an adventure to have conversations with you and to share you with my audience and wherever this gets sent and shared and rippled out to. I'm excited to see and not see the unfoldings in this one.
Yeah, and trust. Thank you. Feels good. Feels like it's a key part at this moment. So I trust it will, and I'm ready to receive whatever echoes back. Thank you so much, Chrissy. It's been awesome. You're awesome, and this has been an awesome sandbox to play in. Thank you. Thank you for playing.
Likewise. And as always, my friends, for those of you who are listening, play on.